Hello, everybody. Today I am speaking to you from my garden, and I am in a hammock because there were no chairs available. Um, yes, it is a beautiful sunny day. It has been a beautiful sunny day the entire time. Let's be so for real. I live in a tropical climate. But still, we need to appreciate the things we have. Um, Now I need to find a good way to segue from that light-hearted intro to a pretty serious and controversial topic. So I'm just gonna say, like, today is pretty heavy material that we're gonna be talking about. Um, and it is, if you've read the title, you'll see it's the book and the TV series The Handmaid's Tale. So if you don't know, The Handmaid's Tale is a dystopian book written by Margaret Atwood in which year? 1985, and the show is an adaptation that started in 2017. I think it's still going. So the plot is there's this sickness, and it makes the majority of Americans infertile, which means that society collapses because nobody's having babies anymore, and it's becoming a little bit of an issue. Society is rebuilt by a violent, gun-toting minority of misogynists. Then the people are divided into classes, and men very clearly come out on top. And I'm not going to go too much into specifics, but basically fertile women are assigned to be handmaids to the commanders, which is like the highest rank of man in society. And then there's this creepy rape ritual, which is based on, what was it based on? Yes, the story of Rachel and her handmaid Bilhah. And so the commanders, who do have wives, by the way, their wives just kind of babies, try to impregnate the handmaid assigned to them. This is not a fun show, to be clear. I think it's not supposed to be. I'm not saying it's supposed to be. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying some stuff happens. The story follows a handmaid who is called Fred, but in her past life her name was June. And we see basically the collapse of society and the rise of the new society called Gilead through her eyes. So yeah, it's a very dark show. And the thing is, for a lot of people, it is not just fiction. Especially in America, in the US, pro-abortion protests incorporate a lot of imagery from the show. And the message is quite clear, if we allow pro-lifers to ban abortion, it will be one more step towards a society in which women's rights are stripped away. And that's where I come in. I am a pro-lifer, or if you will, an anti-abortionist. I don't know. You guys, you can call me pro-life, you can call me pro-birth, you can call me anti-abortion. I don't really care. It all boils down to the same thing. What I would like to do today is I would like to look at the depiction of pro-lifers in the show and by fans of the show, and see what the effect of what effect this has had on the abortion discussion. And I would like to take a look inward and point out some weak spots in pro-lifers' attitudes. Please remember that abortion is not the only political subject mentioned in the show. The show is about a lot of different things, but abortion is just my forte. This also means that not every character in the show vocalizes an opinion on abortion. In most cases, though, it would be pretty clear who would support what, and fans regularly make these connections. So just because a character doesn't vocalize an opinion on abortion in the show doesn't mean that they aren't widely regarded to have a certain opinion. So I'm going to start very broadly with conservatives. Now, conservatives are not the same as religious people, but they are often lumped into the same group by the show and by its fans, and so there's going to be a little bit of overlap there. So the way Gilead, the society in the show, gets started is there's a bunch of religious loonies with guns who take the Bible way too literally. They see the biblical story of Bilhah, Rachel's handmaid, they see that as a commendation, I guess you could say, instead of condemnation, and so they just run with it. The message is pretty clear: allow the religious right to gain power, and they will start eroding the rights of everyone their religion disapproves of. Okay, I'm not American, but I think it is safe to say, because at this point everybody knows this, American politics are super divided, right? I feel like there's more than two camps, but most of the time it is divided into those two camps. And what I've seemed to notice is that a lot of people seem to think that if you vote for the wrong candidate, then you are either incredibly stupid or evil incarnate. And because, the person you're voting for is a terrible person, you are giving support to a terrible person. And for me, this is a bit ironic, because neither side actually seems to like their own candidates. Like, they're just voting for the person they think is least bad. So this whole thing, if you're voting for this other person, then you're supporting a bad person, and therefore you are also a bad person. It's kind of like, yeah, but don't you also support someone that you agree isn't a great person? Do you see what I'm saying here? It's like, you can't judge the other person for voting for someone that isn't great when you're also not voting for someone who isn't great. But whatever. And this polarization isn't just an American thing, like we like to pretend like, oh, there's Americans, but no, it's also a thing in, at least in my country, the Netherlands, even though we have like 20 plus parties, we still also have a lot of this polarization. When was it? I think about 20 years ago, one of our politicians actually got murdered because other parties in the government were consistently making him look so bad that, yeah, he got killed. So other countries are struggling with this as well.
Ik denk dat Fortuyn zich in zijn eigen vingers gesneden heeft. Ik hoop dat hij in zijn eigen vingers gesneden heeft. En ik hoop dat de wond zo diep is dat het bloeden voor 15 mei niet ophoudt.
And more recently, one of our very controversial right-wing politicians has also been attacked because people just think he's so evil. So yeah, no, it's not just an American thing. I feel like most countries at this point are struggling with this. So either way, the main view is this: the candidate on the other side is evil and will destroy the country, and therefore if you vote for them, you are complicit in causing suffering for millions of people. And yeah, if you look at it that way, then people who vote differently from you do seem to be very selfish people with a complete lack of empathy for others. Or, they might just be dumb and gullible, that's also a view, but neither one of those two views really makes you want to step outside of your own bubble and go talk to people you disagree with. And the worst part is, there are a lot of people out there for who the stereotypes are true. So I could sit here and be like, oh, you guys just need to step out of your bubble and talk to someone you disagree with. But at this point, I can't guarantee you're gonna meet one of the rational, nice, kind people who will change your view of the other side, or if you're just gonna meet, one of the dumb jerks who's gonna convince you that no, actually the people of the other political party are the worst. And I haven't even mentioned the possibility yet that, forgive me, but you might be one of the bad lot. I mean, the fact that you think you aren't doesn't say a whole lot, if you know what I mean. None of the bad guys think they're one of the bad guys. But let's move on. Let's move on to Christians who, if possible, get an even worse rap. In the show, an extremely repressive society is built upon a faulty interpretation of the Bible. And now you might be thinking, but that's a misinterpretation, right? That's not real Christianity. Which, you would be correct, by the way. It is a misinterpretation. But then you're forgetting how many people view Christians. They see Christians as dumb because they believe in a magical sky fairy who gave them unethical commandments that go against all better judgment and scientific knowledge. So there are actually two different views on Christianity. One is that they are, like I said, dumb. They simply don't think about what they believe, and they also don't realize that a lot of what they believe isn't even what Jesus would have taught. I always find it a bit interesting that non-Christians seem to think they know more about what Jesus said than the people whose entire lives revolve around him. But that's beside the point right now. According to this view, either Christians are A, too deluded to realize that Jesus actually preached love. Their pastors and other evil church leaders have convinced them that women are second-rate citizens and they don't understand that Jesus would actually not have agreed with them. Or B, Christianity itself is evil, but once again, Christians have been deluded to think that it's good. This one, while still, viewing Christians negatively, at least, there's a possibility there that they think they're being good, right? That they're well-intentioned. The other view paints Christians in a less positive light. They are actually bad people, and they will use their religion as an excuse to hurt others. They will say they're against torture, but if, for example, a teen girl gets pregnant, they would rather she die than she gets an abortion, and this would be indeed torture, since that death would not be quick or painless. They will say that they love unconditionally, but if, for example, their child comes out as a homosexual or transgender, they will belittle and or bully that child so hard that many of them commit suicide. Next category. Yes, I went and sat on the floor because the sun was shining in my... It's actually going to shine directly in my eyes in a couple minutes anyway, but whatever. Let's move on. Next topic. Men. Men are not viewed very positively in today's society, you know? There's a man in a room full of women feels lucky, a woman in a room full of men is afraid of being murdered, the women prefer being stuck in the woods with a bear over being in there with a man, and it's not all men but always a man. You know, you get the gist. One thing I tend to fear when I look at this trend is that besides shedding light on many of the struggles women face, it might also convince young girls who haven't had a negative experience with men yet that men are nonetheless dangerous. See, on the one hand, right, I think it's good to speak to a culture of sexual freedom and say, hey, we are taking this too far, and men and boys now refuse to moderate themselves and take no for an answer, right? But on the other hand, when you make it about men, it fosters sexism and hatred. And when men speak out and say, hey, this rhetoric is making me feel worthless, like I'm a terrible person just for being a man, they're told, oh, that's so typical of men making it about themselves when we're trying to talk about women's struggles. And I fear we may have crossed the line from bringing awareness to women's struggles and just gone into demonizing an entire gender. But either way, yeah. So, pro-life men. Pro-life men are obviously out for their own gain. They want to bed whatever woman they want and refuse to accept no. And as in the show, they see women as their obedient servants who exist solely to take care of them and please their needs. And, you know, this one that I found very interesting, they say pro-life men will say they don't want to bed pro-choice women, but when it comes down to it, they will. They will force women into submission because they want control and power. Pro-life women is the last category on this list, and I think it's the most interesting one. Pro-life women pose a bit of a conundrum for pro-choicers. It's confounding to them how women can be against their own rights, because for pro-choicers, the right to abortion is like the right to own property or the right to vote. So being against abortion is basically being against women. Why on earth then are these women trying to outlaw it? It goes against one of the most important principles many women believe in, being a girl's girl or women supporting women. The idea is, you know, that women understand each other's struggles and therefore need to support each other. So in practice, it would mean willing to give period products to a girl who forgot hers at home, checking up with a girl who seems uncomfortable while talking to a guy, telling a girl there's lipstick on her teeth, etc. So yeah, that's the question. Why are these women seemingly against their own rights? Well, there are, once again, a few different ways to view it. One is that these women are simply deluded pawns of the patriarchy, right? We may believe that we are right, but that's just because we've been fooled and we're too stupid to notice that. But as annoying as it is that people assume that, you know, we are stupid just because of what we believe, there is an even more malicious view, and that's that these women are betraying their own gender. These pro-life women, they believe that conservatives are going to win, and they hope to end up on the winning side of history. Their hope is that once the conservatives, you know, win and change the country into theocracy, they will be spared because they helped the elites gain power. Thus, they disregard the rights of other women and side with the men out of selfishness. Of course, they will not be the exception, and they will not be spared. And this also explains why many believe that pro-life women will get an abortion performed on themselves if they want to. In this view, it's not about abortion for the pro-life women, it's about being on the side of the oppressor and coming out on top. Pro-life women are portrayed in the story of Serena Joy in the show, yeah, remember this is still about the show, who lobbied for traditional values. But once the people she fought for actually gain power, she is discarded because she was just a useful pawn. Once the theocratic dictators got what they wanted from her, she was useless to them. One particularly worrying thing I see in the show is that Serena Joy is considered a terrible person who gets what she deserves.
In flashbacks to pre-Gilead USA, we see Serena Joy campaigning for Gilead's vision of women staying in the home as subservient wives and mothers. This backstory is reminiscent of right-wing female personalities like Ann Coulter, Tomi Lahren, or Phyllis Schlafly, who gained platforms by promoting regressive gender ideas. Most recently, Amy Coney Barrett is the female addition to the Supreme Court who helped usher in the end of Roe v. Wade. In The Handmaid's Tale, as soon as Serena has served her purpose helping the rise of the Gilead regime, she's cast aside and given none of the power she expected. So it's a reminder that if you campaign against the rights of all women, or any minority group you belong to, you won't be the exception who escapes the consequences.
There is no one less worthy of redemption than you.
And for me, it's like, if this is how people are taught to think of pro-life women, that is a little bit scary. Like, how are we going to be treated if people view us as evil, selfish traitors who deserve no mercy or redemption? Will it be any surprise if violence occurs? I don't even know whether I mentioned it, but this portrayal of pro-life women is genuinely very sexist. I mean, the first part already, where they say, if you as a woman are pro-life, then you are stupid. Can I, as a woman, not disagree with you politically without being considered an idiot? That's just super rude. I am perfectly willing to acknowledge that there are many women who disagree with me politically who are very intelligent. Do I believe that their decisions actually set women back? Yes, but I also acknowledge that these women are, intelligent. And just because I disagree with them on what the best course of action to take is, doesn't mean that they are suddenly idiots. But the other one is actually even more insulting. Now, here's the thing. Feminism has been saying for years, hey, we need to stop viewing women through a male lens. And what they mean by this is we need to stop viewing women as side characters in men's stories. A woman is perfectly capable of taking action without a man being the cause behind it. We see this in history where we try to give the names of notable women instead of their husbands' names. We see this in the modern day where women are saying, hey, by the way, we don't dress for male attention. We actually dress because we like how it looks. But then now with pro-life women, suddenly it's like, oh no, in your case, it's absolutely fine to assume that everything you are doing is because of men. It is completely fine to assume that a woman who is pro-life is just doing it because she wants attention from men. Because that's the whole pick-me thing. The idea behind that is that pro-life women are simply against abortion because they are hoping that the conservative men will give them attention, that the conservative men will pick them. Now, to be clear, as a woman, I don't think there is anything wrong with doing something because of a man, right? I mean, men are just humans, the same way women are just humans, and humans interact with each other. But at the same time, I think it is incredibly sexist to assume that every single pro-life woman is pro-life because she is trying to get attention from men. It makes it very clear that you do not view pro-life women as capable, intelligent individuals. And once again, although I have no problem with saying that a lot of my actions are motivated by people who happen to be men, because, everyone has people in their lives, right? Everybody gets affected by the people in their lives, whether they be men or women. At the same time, what I do find offensive is that when I say I am pro-life, people look at me and say, oh, yeah, you just want guys to like you. Genuinely, how low do you think my self-esteem, self-worth, and dignity are that you immediately assume that my political opinions are based on what I think guys like? Just think about that for a second. Think about how incredibly offensive it is to say to anybody, hey, your deeply held beliefs are actually a plea for attention. I may be young, but I am still an adult, and you are treating me like some insecure tween. It's just incredibly disrespectful. Okay, so we've seen how basically the pro-choice viewers of The Handmaid's Tale view pro-lifers. It's not very positive. But don't worry, pro-lifers are pretty good at stereotyping as well. There's this really, actually, a Facebook and Instagram platform that I follow called Dank Pro-Life Memes. And he posts pro-life memes, and I really enjoy them. And sometimes he'll post something serious and something about his opinion. And a while back, he had a post, and his post was basically about name calling. Stop calling the other side names. I get it, you think that they are actually pro-abortion or pro-murder, but that's not going to help this debate, right? And then I went to the comments and I thought people were going to agree with him because he was being very rational and very real. And then all these comments were just like, well, yeah, but the differences were right. I'm gonna hold your hand while I say this, but I think the other side also believes they're right when they call you names. Do you see the problem here? So that's that. There's another really cool account that I suggest you follow, called this is bad, equality something. I'll put it over here. And she also regularly addresses this, where pro-lifers will hear like a buzzword and think, that's that pro-choice argument. I've got an argument. I've got a counter argument for that, and then they will just not listen to the other side. And so I really like her. I suggest you check her out. But yeah, pro-lifers are good at this too, right? If you're for abortion, then you just want to have sex with as many girls as you want, and then you want to be able to force them into abortion so you don't have to pay child welfare, child care, whatever. And you're pro-murder, and you're a terrible person, and you're on Satan's side. You know what I mean? Like, pro-lifers do this too. And it's annoying. Now we're gonna get to the crux of the video, because up till now I've just been describing stuff. I've not been making a point at all. I'm gonna tell you what the point is. The point is that y'all are annoying. The point is that we are ruining the debate, and we need to stop making so many assumptions. That's it, guys. This is my point here in the video. Stop assuming that the person on the other side of the table is a bad person, and start actually having a normal conversation with them. And I have reasons. I have got reasons for that. The first one is that it's freaking annoying. You're being obnoxious. Every single time online, whenever I see someone trying to hold a normal, rational conversation, someone comes jumping in, pointing fingers, and the entire conversation devolves, and everybody starts name-calling, and nobody's getting convinced, and everybody starting to hate each other, and it's... Can we be mature? Can we be adults? Okay. Now, I'm not saying that you have to stand by while somebody is being a terrible person, right? If a pro-life guy comments on a pregnant teen's post, oh, you should have kept your legs closed, roast him. Get that man away, okay? Same thing if a pro-choice person comments on some disabled person's posts with, oh, abortion would have been more merciful, yeah, block them, report them. Obviously, I'm not saying that we have to tolerate bad behavior. What I am saying is that you shouldn't assume that somebody's going to be a bad person before they've even done it. So that's the first argument, right? It's just annoying. The second one, though, is that we're not getting anywhere. Here's the thing. For both sides, this advice is going to count for both sides. Both sides want the same thing, and that's for the laws to change. Now, one of them wants it to change a different way than the other, but we both want the same thing. We want the laws to change. How do you get laws to change? By voting for different people. How do you get a population to vote for a different person? You change people's minds. Now, how do you change people's minds? I don't think that yelling and disrespecting them is gonna work. So, I have compiled a list of things that we need to stop doing in order to get this conversation back on the road again. These rules count for both real life and on the internet. The first thing is, remember, you are not just talking to this other person. There is an audience, and they do look at how you act. So being mean, right? Saying, oh, you should have closed your legs. Oh, you should have been aborted. Even if the person you are talking to clearly isn't going to change opinions, there are people who are watching your conversation, and in their mind now, you are representing your side. If you say bad things, that's what they're going to remember about your side in general. So you should probably remember that the next time you say something mean. Yeah, maybe you don't care about the person you're saying it to, right? Maybe you're like, ugh, they're a terrible person. Who cares if I hurt their feelings and they deserve whatever. Okay, fine. Even if that other person deserves you saying absolutely horrendous things to them, the people around them, the people who are watching your conversation, are gonna look at you and say, oh, you are representing that political side, and you are acting like a bully right now. And that's gonna be their impression of your side. Another good rule is stop making assumptions. Now, this is where The Handmaid's Tale kind of comes in, because it has created such a negative view of pro-lifers that now if you say you're against abortion, people will think of The Handmaid's Tale and they will think that you are pro-rape. They will say you're pro-torture, anti-women, pro-racism, all these other things, right? It makes it very difficult to have a conversation. Now, here's the thing. There might be people on both sides who are terrible people. But if you assume beforehand that you know what they believe and that you know what type of person they are, that's not going to make them like you any better, right? And that's like, remember, we are trying to change people's minds, not get them angry at us. So, right, here's the thing. Say you walk up to a person, you find out they disagree with you politically. There's two things you can do. You can either assume that they are a terrible trash person because of their political ideology. You know, assume they are a monster, they hate people, they're gonna be rude. If it turns out you were wrong, you look pretty bad. Because then they're the ones being nice and kind, and you're the one out here yelling. If it turns out you were right, I guess, yay, good for you. If you assume that they are a normal person, a rational person, who genuinely believes in what they are saying, then if you're proven wrong, okay, yeah, so they are a terrible person. Guess what? You're the one who stayed calm and collected, and they're the one who's yelling. If it turns out you were right, that is absolutely great, because now you have another person there, and you have treated them with respect. Now they are willing to listen to you. And especially if you've listened to them first, which is going to be the next point, if you've listened to them, they're going to be willing to listen to you, and you might actually be able to say something to them that will change their minds, and they will want to listen to you because you have been kind to them. That's the next point. Listen to people. Have you ever been in a conversation with someone who doesn't listen? If you have, you'll know it's pretty annoying, because at the end, they've been talking and talking and talking, but they have never actually addressed anything that you said, so none of what they said was really useful to you, because they just assumed they knew what you were talking about and started playing off this premeditated spiel on their opinion. And it's not a fun conversation. This is what I see in a lot of arguments. People will hear a buzzword and they will be like, hold up, I know that. And the moment that happens, their brain just shuts off their ears and starts revving up their mouth with this argument that they have heard somewhere online and that they're going to be repeating verbatim. But guess what? That argument isn't always actually a decent argument for what that person was saying. And if you'd listened to what they were saying, you would have realized that actually their opinion is a little bit different from what everybody else's opinion is. And now you're standing there playing off this, recorded spiel of what your opinion is, and they're just standing there and it's like, yeah, but I didn't say that though. That wasn't my opinion, so okay, what are they supposed to do with that argument that you just masterfully explained to them when you weren't even responding to their opinion? It also makes people feel pretty disrespected, because clearly you don't care what they have to say, you just want to convince them. The next one is, don't get mad when people still disagree with you after a conversation. This one kind of goes back to the part where, a lot of pro-life women are assumed to be dumb. And this is because pro-choicers are like, well, we are, like, obviously we're right? Because we've shown empathy, our side shows empathy, our side has morality on its side, our side has science on its side, our science has, justice on its side, right? So obviously, how on earth could anybody disagree with us? And that's how they come to the conclusion that if you disagree with them, you're either evil, and you don't actually believe that abortion is bad, you're just using it as a way to get to the top, or you're stupid, right? And so the thing is, a lot of people actually think like that, right? They think, well, clearly I'm a smart person, I'm a rational person, I have weighed all of the evidence, and I have such good arguments for my point that nobody could hear these arguments and still disagree with me. So what you will see then is that people will, give out all of the arguments they have, right? Just a flood of arguments, a flood of talking. And then the other person will still not agree with them. and they will actually get mad and frustrated because it's like, but I gave you the arguments, like how do you not see this? And then they can get very patronizing, and they will denigrate the other person, and it's just not fun to see. So here's something to remember: if somebody doesn't agree with you, even after hearing all of your arguments, it doesn't mean that they are dumb. It might mean that they need a little bit of time to adjust their worldview that they've held their whole life. Or maybe they know some arguments you don't, and they simply still aren't convinced. Or maybe you're not that great at explaining your arguments. You know, there's a lot of different possibilities. And another one, this one's especially good for pro-lifers: don't make fun of other people's fears. This whole Handmaid's Tale thing, a lot of people who watch it are genuinely afraid. Not necessarily that exactly the thing that happens in the show is gonna happen, but that something similar is gonna happen, right? And a lot of pro-lifers, they will make fun of them for it. They'll say, oh, you idiots, we don't want this at all. Why would you be afraid of this? And I think, here's an example for you. If I say I have a phobia of spiders and I go to a therapist for it, what will she do? Will she laugh at me and say, oh, you idiot, spiders aren't going to hurt you, here, and then she just shoves me into a closet full of spiders? Or would she take my hand, calmly say, okay, I understand that you're afraid of them, and I can see why, I understand why. Now let's calmly and slowly start exposing you to spiders little by little. Obviously, it's the second one. And so I think we need to be a little bit more understanding of pro-choicers who are so afraid of this. Because here's the thing, guys. You may not agree with this, right? You may think it's stupid, blah, blah, blah. Okay, doesn't matter for a second. Just bear with me. People who believe that abortion is a human right, they don't see it as like a separate, special type of right. No, that's like the same thing as the right to vote, the right to be able to read, the right to own property. And I'm gonna tell you guys, if people were trying to take away my right to vote or my right to own property, I would be rioting too. I would be stressed, I would be scared, because it's scary. And so we can look at pro-choicers and say, well, clearly we don't want that, right? Because we see abortion as a very separate issue from voting or owning property, right? So we can say, oh, you idiots, we're not gonna do that. But you being rude and mean and invalidating their fears isn't gonna make them trust you more, right? Because you're saying, hey, you need to trust us when we say that we don't want all of those bad things. But then if you are at the same time mocking them for being afraid of bad things, that's not going to make them want to trust you. I would say a very good post I've seen about this, I think it's from the Equal Rights Institute, that's that Instagram page I was talking about, actually is a very good post. It's about humanizing the pro-life position, because a lot of people have simply been taught that the pro-lifers are terrible people, and they don't really realize that a lot of pro-lifers are rational and kind and have empathy. And so if you might be the only person they meet who is openly pro-life, because it's not a popular standpoint. And so instead of mocking them and proving to them that pro-lifers are cruel, show to them that you are a good, kind person. Start dismantling that false image of your side piece by piece by going against the negative stereotypes. This is another one. Ooh, this is another good advice. I almost forgot this one. Remember when I talked about the post where all the pro-lifers in the comments were like, well, we get to call other people names because we're right. Stop viewing conversations as a way to prove that you are right. Most of the time in life, if you are trying to prove that you are right and the other is wrong, it becomes about personalities, right? It becomes about your own ego. That means that if the conversation doesn't go the way you want it to, you're gonna get super upset and you're gonna get mad. And you're not gonna look good. And also, it's gonna make you say super mean things to the other person, and it's actually not gonna help you in your cause. It's not about you. Like, that's what I'm trying to say. It's not about you. Like, nobody cares if you're right. Hey, editing me here. I just wanted to explain what I meant by this. So, because it sounds a bit counterintuitive, right? Wait, if we're trying to convince people that abortion is wrong or abortion is right, of course, depending on where you stand, then isn't trying to prove that you're right, isn't that kind of the point? And so I'm going to explain what I mean by that. So, no, I don't think trying to prove you are right is a good idea. And here's why. First of all, trying to prove that you are right makes the conversation about you instead of about the argument. Trying to prove you're right inevitably ends up with you or both of you trying to show everyone that you are the smart person in the conversation, right? You're the intelligent one. You have the good arguments. It turns the conversation into an argument. An argument isn't going to prove anything. An argument isn't going to change anyone's mind. Because people are going to start shouting over each other. People are going to start, it's going to be about who can have the snappiest reply as quickly as possible, right? Nobody's listening to each other anymore because they're already thinking about the next devastating blow they're going to hit. You know what I mean? So trying to prove you're right turns the conversation into an argument, which then means that nobody's listening anymore. Another thing is that trying to prove you're right makes it about you and your ego. And that means that you will not be willing to back down even a little bit. Like in this example with the names, it's not that deep, right? It's not that deep. You can just compromise and say, okay, these are the less important things in the conversation and focus on the main issue. But when you're trying to be right, it's no longer actually about the topic at hand, right? Like I said, it's about you. So that means that if the conversation shifts to less relevant things, right, like using the right terms, you're not going to be willing to compromise because you're still in this, no, I'm right, you know? And so you're just going to be very difficult actually and say, no, I'm not going to call you pro-choice. I'm going to call you pro-murder because that's the truth and I want to be correct and right. And it's like, you're going to divert the conversation, right? Because if you are in this conversation with the goal of communicating and about the topic, then you will be a lot more willing to compromise on some less important things, right? Because it is about abortion and not about terms. But if it's about proving you're right, then the conversation is about you and not actually about abortion. So if the conversation shifts from abortion, who cares? You're still out here fighting for the dubious title of winner, I guess. Which means that in the end, the conversation isn't even about abortion anymore. Lastly, the flip side of trying to prove you're right is inevitably proving the other person is wrong. People don't like being attacked. And we should remember that, because if you are trying to prove you are right, you're also trying to prove the other person is wrong, which means you will be attacking them. You know, you can say, oh, but they shouldn't take it so personally, right? It's the facts, don't care about your feelings, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I get it. If you ran the world, things would be super different and everything would work the way you would want it to, and everybody would be super rational and never take offense at anything, blah, blah, blah. But we don't live in your world. We live in this one right here, where people will take offense if you try to prove them wrong. If you're trying to prove you're right, you're trying to prove they're wrong, and you're going to be attacking them, usually in front of other people. This means that they will go on the defense because nobody likes looking stupid. And yes, if somebody is proving you are wrong in front of an entire group of people, you will feel stupid, and nobody wants that. So they're going to go into the defense, and they don't want to listen to you anymore, because if they acknowledge anything you say as being right, that's also acknowledging they are wrong. And it's kind of acknowledging, hey, you won. I guess I'm the one who was silly. Nobody wants to do that. So, yeah, they're not even going to listen to you anymore. What we should be aiming for is changing people's minds. And changing people's minds isn't by proving that you are right and they are wrong. It is by communicating. It's by listening. It's by figuring out, okay, what exactly do you believe? Okay, and now, how am I going to explain what I believe in a way that you will understand and that you will resonate with? How do we communicate effectively so that you understand where I'm coming from? Trying to prove you're right is about you versus them. Trying to change their mind is about you and them. And that's what we want, because that will actually make a difference. Now, I think we're nearing the end of the video now. Yeah, so on one hand, you could call this video, you could probably call it a little bit naive. And I'm aware of that. Humans are always gonna get mad at each other. But it doesn't mean that I'm not allowed to say that it's actually not a very smart strategy on either side's part. I think if we look at shows like The Handmaid's Tale, it isn't actually contributing to the conversation because all it's doing is cementing this negative image in people's minds of the other side. And sure, I believe that if you are pro-choice, that you are for the morally wrong thing, okay? So I believe that morally you are in the wrong with that opinion. But there is quite a big difference between saying, hey, I think your opinion is actually morally wrong, to going to, you are a terrible person and I need to put you down. You know what I mean? I think if we approach conversations a bit more openly, a bit more where you, instead of assuming the worst, you actually assume the best. You know, this person has thought about what they believe and they actually have good reasons for it. This person cares about others. This person is kind. This person knows what they stand for. Things like that. If you get proved wrong, it's fine. It's whatever. Okay, so you were nice to someone that apparently didn't really deserve it. Although, to be fair, even if someone is dumb, that doesn't mean you get to be mean to them. You know? That's also something you should remember. But if you come into that conversation assuming that people are bad on purpose, you're not going to change anybody's minds. All you're going to do is insult a lot of people. And yes, actually, caring about what other people think, caring about whether you offend another person, caring about other people's feelings, basically, is actually kind of an important life skill. Like, I know that, especially among the conservative, it's like, facts don't care about your feelings. I don't care if I offend another person. Maybe you should. Maybe the way other people feel, to a certain extent, obviously, to a certain level, is important. And making sure that you are not an abrasive, obnoxious person actually is going to help you convince more people that your side is right, because more people are going to want to listen to you. Guys, just remember today in the comments, keep it civil, because this is a very controversial topic, and I would find it very ironic if underneath this video, where I'm trying to lobby for being, basically just be a little bit more kindness in the debate and a little bit more openness in the debate, I would really hate it if all the comments under here were just negative, so please try to keep that in mind. And that's it for me. I think I'll see you next time. Bye!